The day Princess Seraphine Arden took my duchy away from me, she did it in front of half the royal court. There was no accusation of treason. No charge of corruption. No claim that I had failed the northern border. She simply stood beneath the gilded canopy in the Hall of Banners, held a sealed royal writ in both hands, and told me that Renmarch needed a lord who understood unity. Then she gave my home to my father's bastard son. Julian Vale stood 3 steps below her dais in a new black coat with silver embroidery at the cuffs. He had never commanded a winter patrol. He had never spent a night in a mountain watchtower while the wind froze the hinges shut. He had never sat across from 3 rival clan chiefs and convinced them that grain was worth more than blood. He had never walked a road after a spring flood and counted how many bridges had to be rebuilt before the army could move. But he knew how to smile at court. He knew which nobleman wanted a hunting permit, and which minister wanted his nephew appointed to a customs post. Most importantly, he knew how to make Seraphine feel that every decision she made was wise. I knew how to tell her when she was wrong. That, in the end, was the greater crime. Adrian, Seraphine said, and her voice was careful enough to sound almost kind, this is not a punishment. The court was so quiet that I could hear the soft crackle of the braziers along the marble walls. I looked at the writ in her hands. The wax seal belonged to her father, King Aldric, but the language had Seraphine's rhythm all over it. The writ cited the old March Charter, a wartime provision allowing the Crown, with council assent, to reassign a frontier march when the throne declared its concentration of military and territorial power a danger to the realm. It had almost never been used against a lawful heir. King Aldric had signed beneath the council seals. Seraphine had argued for the measure. Her father had approved it. He had praised the same concentration of authority when it won him wars, but age and illness had made him less comfortable with a border that depended so visibly on one duke. Renmarch was to be transferred to Julian Vale, acknowledged son of the late Duke Marek Vale, for the sake of stability, reconciliation, and greater harmony among the northern houses. My ducal authority would cease at sunset. My command of the northern army would end with it. The royal council would review an appropriate future appointment for me at a later date. I read that last line twice. It was the kind of sentence men used when they wanted you gone but lacked the courage to say so plainly. Julian tilted his head toward me. Brother, you know I never asked for this. I looked at him. He had been asking for it since the day our father died. Not openly. Julian never asked for anything openly. He hinted. He suggested. He allowed other people to discover how unfair the world had been to him. He had been born outside my father's marriage, raised in a comfortable estate, educated beside me, and given a generous inheritance in coin. That had not been enough. Nothing is enough for a man who mistakes another person's place for proof that he has been cheated. Seraphine descended 1 step from the dais. I need you to understand the political reality. There was the phrase she had used more and more often over the last 2 years. Political reality. It had justified delaying our wedding. It had justified appointing Julian to the Royal Trade Council. Julian had brought her the Faro, Velden, and Corvin blocks, 3 houses whose votes could stall taxes, officer confirmations, and the succession measures Seraphine wanted settled before her father's health failed completely. It had justified replacing 3 veteran quartermasters with sons of nobles whose votes she needed in council. It had justified sending my reports back unopened because, in her words, the court cannot be governed by border anxieties. I folded my hands behind my back. What reality is that? Her jaw tightened. For a moment, I saw the woman I had once known. Seraphine had never liked being challenged in public. Years ago, she had liked that I challenged her in private. That difference had once been the foundation of our trust. Now it was the reason she wanted me removed. The Northern Lords see Renmarch as an extension of your personal power, she said. Julian has relationships you do not. He can bring them closer to the crown. Those lords already swear taxes and troops to the crown. They obey you. They obey agreements. You built those agreements. Yes. A few courtiers shifted. Seraphine's eyes flashed. She had wanted me to resist emotionally. She had expected anger, perhaps a demand that she reconsider. She had probably prepared answers. Instead, I was asking her to state exactly what she was doing. She took a breath. This transfer will reduce unnecessary concentration of military and territorial authority. There it was. The real sentence. My victories had become dangerous because they belonged too visibly to me. Not because I had used them against the crown. Because I could have. Julian stepped forward. Adrian, this does not have to become ugly. I almost smiled. Nothing reveals a man's confidence quite like receiving another man's inheritance, and then warning him not to behave badly about it. Seraphine held the writ out. Your seal. I reached beneath my coat and removed the ducal signet from its chain. It was heavy, old iron-edged with silver. My grandfather had worn it during the Eastern Rebellion. My father had used it to sign the first treaty with the Stone River clans. I had pressed it into wax on bridge contracts, grain releases, recruitment orders, hospital charters, death notices, marriage exemptions, and letters to mothers whose sons would not be coming home. I laid it in Seraphine's palm. Her fingers closed around it. Something changed in her face. Perhaps she had expected me to hold on longer. Perhaps she had expected the symbol to matter more to me than what it represented. Is that all? I asked. Julian blinked. Seraphine stared at me. Adrian. If there are additional crown properties or documents I am required to surrender, I would prefer the order in writing. Her composure slipped. You are not even going to argue? No. After everything you have said about Renmarch? I said Renmarch mattered. Then why are you surrendering it? I looked around the hall. At the ministers who had complained for years about the cost of fortifications, and now watched to see if I would humiliate myself. At the nobles who had praised my victories but disliked how often I had reminded them that armies ate grain rather than applause. At Julian, who wanted my chair because he had only ever seen me sitting in it. Then I looked back at Seraphine. Because you are the heir to the crown, and you have made your decision. She seemed almost offended by my obedience. You could ask me to reconsider. I could. But you will not. No. Why? Because if the woman I was meant to marry needed me to beg for the right to remain useful, there was nothing left to save. I did not say that. Not there. Instead, I gave her the answer she had spent years teaching me. Political reality. The silence that followed was colder than the northern wind. I bowed to the king. I bowed to Seraphine. I did not bow to Julian. Then I turned and walked out of the Hall of Banners without looking back. By sunset, I was no longer Duke of Renmarch. By midnight I was packing. I took less than the palace expected. My personal clothes. My father's field journal. My mother's small ivory saint. 3 books on road engineering. 2 saddles. The sword I had bought with my first officer's pay. The contents of my private accounts, already separated from ducal revenue under crown law. That was all. I did not empty the armories. I did not transfer grain. I did not take horses registered to the duchy. I did not burn records or destroy contracts. Every ledger was left in its cabinet. Every military map was turned over to the new command staff. Every supply agreement was copied and indexed. If Julian failed, no one would be able to say I had sabotaged him. That mattered to me. Not because I wished him well. Because I had spent most of my adult life building Renmarch, and I would not soil that work simply because someone else had been given credit for it. The first knock on my door came before dawn. Colonel Bram Holt entered without waiting for permission. He was broad, gray at the temples, and had a scar across his chin from a battle that the royal chroniclers now called Seraphine's triumph at Grey Ford. Seraphine had not been within 300 miles of Grey Ford. Bram shut the door behind him. I heard. So did everyone. You're leaving? Yes. Where? I don't know yet. He stared at me. You don't know? No. Then I'm coming. I shook my head. You command the Northern Cavalry. I commanded the Northern Cavalry under you. You serve the Crown. I serve the army. That distinction can get you hanged. So can bad logistics. I sighed. Bram. He stepped closer. I have served 4 commanders. 1 drank. 1 stole. 1 froze every time an enemy did something he hadn't predicted. The 4th taught me that a cavalry unit without fodder is just a collection of hungry men sitting on expensive animals. Touching. I'm serious. So am I. If you resign because of me, you lose years toward your pension. I checked. Of course you did. I can afford it. You have 2 daughters. They are married. Your wife will kill you. She already approved. That surprised me. Bram smiled for the first time. She said you were the only commander who ever sent me home before winter storms. I rubbed my face. You do understand I have no army to offer you. I know. No title. I know. No estate. I heard. And no plan. That part concerns me. It concerns me too. Another knock came. Then another. By sunrise, my corridor was full. Captain Soren Pike from the engineers. Mara Venn, chief surgeon of the northern hospitals. Edwin Cale, who had spent 15 years managing grain depots. 3 clerks. 2 bridge masters. A blacksmith. A surveyor. A former scout who claimed he had only come to say goodbye and somehow never left. I stood in the doorway and looked at them. You cannot all come with me. Mara folded her arms. Why not? Because I don't know where I'm going. Then decide. I no longer have authority over you. That is not what we asked. Edwin lifted a leather case. I resigned an hour ago. You what? I resigned. Why? He looked offended. Have you met the man taking over Red March? I had. That was the problem. By noon, there were 43 names on the list. By evening, more than 100 people had asked to follow. Asking was not the same as leaving. I refused to turn a political shock into a stampede. Anyone under active Crown order had to complete formal resignation or remain. Families with land, debts, apprenticeships, or winter stores to settle were told to wait until I could send word from wherever I ended up. Only a few dozen people free of Crown obligations were prepared to leave with the first column. Retired officers came. Civil engineers came. Carpenters came. Merchants came. Widows of soldiers came. Families who had moved from ruined villages into the new towns we had built came to ask where I was going. Most would follow later, if I found a place worth following me to. I had no answer for them. So I went to the only place in the capital where I had always found one. The Royal Archive. Master Archivist Elias Marr looked up as I entered. He was old enough to remember 3 kings and cynical enough to trust none of them. I wondered when you'd come. You heard. The archive hears everything eventually. Usually after the people involved begin lying. I sat across from him. I need maps. Of Red March? No. His eyebrows rose. Interesting. I need unclaimed or disputed territory outside direct Crown administration. Somewhere with access to water, defensible ground, and a trade route that could be restored. Elias leaned back. How many people? Possibly several hundred. Soldiers? Some. Families? Yes. Are you founding a rebellion? No. Pity. Rebellions create excellent records. Elias. He grunted and stood. There is one place. He led me through 3 locked rooms to a cabinet marked with old border surveys. From it he removed a faded map. Southwest of Renmarch, beyond the official boundary stones, lay a valley between 2 ridges and a river that bent like a hook. The map called it Ashvale. Former Crown claim? I asked. Once. Arden surveyed it before the Plague Wars, then formally abandoned direct administration when the old road failed and the settlements could no longer support a garrison. Current ruler? No recognized ruler. Population? Scattered villages. Traders. Refugees. A few clan settlements. Why hasn't anyone taken it? Bad road. That can be fixed. Seasonal floods. Also fixable. 3 competing claims from neighboring barons. Documented? Poorly. Elias looked at me over the map. And because everyone believes the soil is thin. I traced the river. Has anyone surveyed the upper terraces? Not in 50 years. What about iron? Unknown. Timber? Plenty. Stone? More than you can eat. I smiled. I have never tried eating stone. Go there in winter. You may reconsider. I rolled the map. What does the crown claim now? Nothing directly. Aldrich's grandfather renounced royal administration in the old withdrawal decree. The neighboring barons still waive older grazing, mill, and toll grants when it suits them, but none of those grants plainly conveys the valley itself. So the crown cannot give it to me. Correct. Good. Elias tapped one finger against the table. Adrian. I looked at him. They think you are going to come back. Who? All of them. I said nothing. Your princess most of all. She is not my princess anymore. Not yet, perhaps. Elias. She expects you to cool down. Julian expects Renmarch to be easier than you made it look. The ministers expect the border to remain quiet because it has been quiet for 6 years. It has been quiet because we paid for quiet. I know. They don't? I know that too. He sat again. Do you intend to warn them? I left every report. That was not my question. I thought of Seraphine's hand closing around my seal. Of the way she had looked at me when I refused to plead. I have been warning them for 10 years. Elias nodded slowly. Then perhaps they will finally have the opportunity to learn. We left the capital 3 days later. No banners. No royal escort. No title. Just wagons, horses, children, tools, personal belongings, and people who had decided that uncertainty with me was preferable to certainty under men they did not trust. At the western gate, I saw a rider waiting. Seraphine. She wore a dark blue cloak over riding clothes and no crown insignia. For one foolish second, my chest tightened. Habit is a cruel thing. She had been part of my future for so long that some part of me still expected every road to bend back toward her. I stopped my horse. The column slowed behind me. Seraphine rode closer. You are actually leaving? Yes. I thought you would stay in the capital until the council found you another appointment. I declined. Her expression hardened. You declined without discussing it with me. I no longer hold office. You are still my betrothed. That word landed between us like something from another life. I looked at her. Am I? She frowned. The marriage contract has not been dissolved. You transferred the estate named in the contract. That does not dissolve it. It removes the foundation of it. That can be amended. By whom? By us. No. She stared at me. Behind her, 2 royal guards looked carefully at the road. What do you mean, no? I mean I will not amend it. Adrian, you are angry. I am. Then do not make permanent decisions in anger. I almost laughed. You took my hereditary duchy this morning. Because I had to make a political choice. And now I am making one. This is different. Why? Because we are not the same thing as Ren March. I studied her face. I had loved that face through campaigns, winters, funerals, council sessions, and long separations. I had imagined growing old beside her. I had believed that even when we disagreed, there was a line she would not cross. Perhaps the worst part was realizing she had crossed it without understanding why it mattered. Seraphine, I said quietly, you gave my home to a man you know I do not trust because he makes your political life easier. That is not fair. It is exact. Julian has support among the northern nobles. Julian has drinking companions among their sons. That is precisely the arrogance I mean. No. Arrogance would be believing relationships at dinners are the same as agreements made during famine, war, and tax disputes. Her cheeks flushed. You always do this. Do what? Speak as if everyone else is a child. I speak as if consequences are real. And you think I do not understand consequences? I looked at the column behind me. At Bram. At Mara. At Edwin. At families who had sold houses and loaded carts because they trusted me more than the crown. Then I looked back at her. I think you are about to. She drew a breath. You expect Julian to fail. I expect him to discover that a duchy is not a chair. Will you help him? No. Her eyes widened. Adrian. He has my records. He will need your experience. Then you should have considered that before giving him my office. That is vindictive. No. I leaned slightly forward in the saddle. Vindictive would be hiding information. I did not. Vindictive would be ordering officers to resign. I did not. Vindictive would be destroying contracts or warning the clans that the crown had betrayed them. I did not. Then what do you call refusing to help? Leaving. She had no answer. I removed the betrothal ring from my hand. It was gold set with a dark blue stone, engraved with the Arden lion. I held it out. Seraphine did not take it. No. Take it. No. We are finished. You do not get to decide that alone. Neither did you. Her face changed. For the first time since I had met her at 15, Seraphine looked afraid. Not frightened of me. Frightened of a future she had assumed would remain available. Adrian. I placed the ring on the stone marker beside the road. Then I turned my horse west. She called my name once. I did not stop. That evening, at the first posting in beyond the capital road, I sent a formal petition to the Royal Chancery. Red March was the estate named as my contribution under the betrothal compact. Because the Crown itself had reassigned that estate, the withdrawal clause allowed either party to terminate the contract rather than renegotiate its foundation. A week later, King Aldrich's clerks returned the petition with royal confirmation. Seraphine never signed it. She no longer had to. Ashvale was worse than the map suggested. The road vanished entirely after the first ridge. 2 bridges had collapsed. The central village had lost half its roofs to a storm the previous year. The lower fields flooded every spring. The nearest mill worked only when the river behaved. There were no walls. No proper granary. No physician. No court. No tax office. No army. Bram looked around when we arrived and whistled. Well? You said you wanted a plan? This is not what I had in mind. Mara climbed down from a wagon. I like it. Bram stared at her. There is mud inside the chapel. Easy to clean. The roof is missing. Good ventilation. I laughed for the first time in days. Before we built anything, the headmen of 7 nearby settlements met us in the roofless chapel. I told them exactly what I had told Seraphine. I had no crown grant to show them and no inherited right to their valley. If they wanted us gone, we would move on. They did not want us gone. They wanted the road cleared, the mill working, the spring floods controlled, and someone strong enough to make armed tax collectors from 3 neighboring barons ask questions before crossing a bridge. We wrote a 1-year provisional compact that night. The settlements recognized me as temporary warden for roads, defense, and disputes between communities. No new levy could be imposed without the settlement council. The compact would expire at the first winter assembly unless they renewed it. That was the first authority I held in Ashvale. We began with water. Not walls. Not a manor. Not a keep. Water. Soren surveyed the river and found that the floods were caused less by volume than by an old landslide that had narrowed the lower channel. I put nearly half my private accounts into the first works. Edwin persuaded 3 merchants to extend credit against future timber contracts, and road tolls approved by the settlement council. We hired local men. We paid in coin and grain. We cut a spillway. We rebuilt the mill race. We dug drainage ditches along the lower fields. Then we built a bridge. Then another. Then a grain shed. Then a clinic. Then a road. By the first winter, more people had come. Some were Red March farmers tired of new levies Julian had introduced to pay for court renovations. Some were discharged soldiers. Some were merchants who had worked with Edwin and trusted his word. Some were simply desperate. I did not ask them to swear loyalty to me. I asked them to sign settlement charters. Land in exchange for work. Local councils in exchange for taxes. Militia duty in exchange for protection. Written rules. Written obligations. Written limits on my authority. That last part confused people. Bram found me one night studying a draft charter. You are giving them the right to remove your appointed magistrate. If 3 councils agree and provide cause. That is dangerous. So is an unaccountable magistrate. You never did that in Red March. I did not have the legal authority. And now you do. Exactly. He sat across from me. You've changed. No. You have. I looked at the fire. Perhaps he was right. In Red March, I had spent years trying to make a flawed system function because I believed service meant endurance. In Ashvale, I had no inherited system to protect. Only people. That made decisions simpler. It did not make me infallible. The first report from Red March reached us before spring. Julian had replaced Edwin with a cousin of Lord Farrow. The new quartermaster had cut winter grain purchases because the previous year's stores looked excessive on paper. He had not understood that Red March stored grain for 2 winters because mountain roads sometimes closed for months. A late storm trapped 3 garrisons. No one starved. Not yet. But the reserves fell dangerously low. The second report came a month later. Julian had cancelled the annual meeting with the Stone River clans. He sent gifts instead. The clans returned them. Seraphine wrote to me shortly after. Her letter was formal. Adrian, I hope you are well. I understand Ashvale has become your chosen residence. I will not interfere. However, there are questions regarding several Renmarch customs arrangements, particularly the Stone River Transit Agreement. Julian's office reports that certain obligations were based on personal assurances from you. Please provide clarification. Seraphine. I read the letter twice. Then I opened my old copy of the treaty index. The agreement was not based on personal assurances. It was signed by 3 clan chiefs, the Renmarch ducal office, and a royal observer. The annual meeting was not ceremonial. It was the mechanism for setting herd passage, market tolls, winter grazing, and compensation for accidental border damage. I copied the relevant clause. Then I wrote back. Princess Seraphine, the Stone River Agreement remains valid. Its annual council is required under the renewal provisions. All signed copies were left in the Renmarch Treaty Cabinet and indexed under Northern External Compacts. No further clarification should be necessary. Adrian Vale. I did not tell her what to do. I did not tell her which chief would be most offended. I did not tell her that sending gifts without meeting them would be interpreted as an attempt to buy compliance without granting respect. That knowledge was not hidden. It was in my campaign journals, in diplomatic reports, in minutes from the last 6 councils. If Julian wanted Renmarch, he could learn Renmarch. The next letter came from Julian himself. Brother, I am told you have been advising the Crown regarding my agreements. I would appreciate it if you communicated through my office in the future. I have inherited a difficult administrative structure and cannot have parallel authority confusing local partners. Julian. I stared at the page. Then I handed it to Bram. He read it. He looked at me. He thinks you're interfering. Apparently. You sent one clause. At Seraphine's request. Bram handed it back. Are you going to answer? No. That summer, Ashvale's first real harvest came in. It was not large. But it was ours. We filled the new granary. We opened the upper road. We established a weekly market beside the river. A family of metalworkers discovered good iron deposits in the eastern ridge. A group of weavers from the south opened a workshop. Mara trained 3 apprentices. Soren designed a floodgate system that worked so well he became unbearable for several weeks. And I slept better than I had in years. Not because life was easy. It was not. I worked from dawn until after dark most days. We had disputes over land. A fever outbreak. A barn fire. 2 murders. 3 failed wells. A group of bandits who assumed we were too new to defend ourselves. Bram corrected that assumption. The 3 neighboring barons tested our compact during that first year. One claimed grazing rights across the eastern slope. Another claimed the mill race. The third sent collectors to demand tolls on the broken Imperial Road. Elias had warned us about all 3. We copied the old grants, brought local witnesses, and forced every claim into writing. One grant had expired with the old garrison. We recognized seasonal grazing under fixed limits on the second. We bought the narrow road easement attached to the third for less than a border skirmish would have cost. They still disliked us, but none could honestly describe Ashvale as land I had simply stolen. I made my own expensive mistake the next spring. Soren warned that the upper bridge piers had been set too early for the meltwater. I wanted the crossing opened before the next grain caravan, and overruled him. The first hard current tore out one pier and half the deck. No one died, which was the only mercy in it. We lost 6 weeks of work and more coin than I wanted to count. At the next council meeting I said the failure was mine, gave Soren authority over the rebuild, and asked the council to cut 2 projects I had wanted in order to pay for it. No one applauded. Good government rarely sounds heroic when it is admitting an expensive mistake. But every problem belonged to the place in front of me. Not to court factions. Not to succession politics. Not to a princess who wanted my judgment until it contradicted her ambition. I did not realize how exhausted I had been until I stopped being exhausted by the same people. 2 years passed. Ashvale became the Free March under a compact signed by 12 local councils. They offered me the title of Lord Protector. I refused it. Then they offered Warden. I accepted that. A warden could be replaced. That mattered. Red March changed too. At first, the reports were small. A delayed convoy. A customs dispute. A bridge left unrepaired. A garrison commander reassigned after arguing with Julian. Then the changes became structural. Julian borrowed against future tax revenue to renovate the ducal seat. He increased commercial tolls. Merchants rerouted through Ashvale. He reduced payments to the Northern Scouts. Several left service. He dismissed 2 clan interpreters because they were, according to one letter, too sympathetic to tribal grievances. The clans stopped sharing intelligence. Seraphine continued rising at court. Her father's health worsened. She chaired more council meetings. She signed more orders. Her portraits appeared in public halls. Songs were written about victories she had not planned. Julian became one of her closest advisors. By then King Aldrich was too ill to chair most councils, and Seraphine was governing in everything but name. She made Julian acting high marshal before the border crisis became a war. The appointment kept Pharaoh cavalry, Velden credit, and Corvin votes inside her succession coalition. It also put a man with no campaign command and authority over officers who had spent their lives on the frontier. Bram heard the news at breakfast and nearly choked. High Marshal? Acting for now. Of what? The kingdom. He cannot organize a stable yard. He has people for that. That is exactly the problem. I buttered bread. You are getting emotional. I am old. I have earned the right. Mara glanced up from her tea. You were emotional when you were young too. That was different. How? I had better knees. I smiled. Life moved. That was the strangest part. The great wound I had imagined would define me became something I remembered only when letters arrived from the east. Seraphine wrote less often. Then not at all. I thought that meant she had accepted my departure. I was wrong. The first true warning came from a merchant caravan. They arrived in Ashvale 2 weeks before winter with 3 wagons instead of 12. Their leader, Tomas Ray, had traded through Red March for 20 years. He found me in the market hall. The Black Banner tribes crossed the upper pass. I stopped writing. How many? Enough to empty 2 villages. Which pass? North Fong. That is Stone River territory. Not anymore. I looked up. What happened? Tomas rubbed his beard. Julian's men arrested one of the chief's sons over a toll dispute. Which chief? Varick. I closed my eyes. Of all the possible men, Chief Varick was proud, suspicious, and absolutely reliable when treated according to agreement. His eldest son had been one of the strongest advocates for trade with Red March. What did Julian do? Demanded a ransom. Fine? Called it a security bond. Amount? Tomas told me. I stared at him. That is more than the entire clan pays in annual tolls. I know. And Varick? Withdrew from the border compact. There it was. A single political decision turning into a military gap. What are the Black Banner tribes doing? Testing. Raiding or holding? Holding some ground. Fortifying? Not yet. Then it is still recoverable. Tomas watched me. You going to tell them? I am sure they know. You think they understand? That was a different question. I called Bram, Soren, and Edwin. We spread maps across the table. North Phong Pass controlled one of 3 practical routes through the upper mountains. If hostile forces held it through winter, they could move south in spring. If Stone River refused to provide scouts, the Crown would be blind in difficult ground. If Red March's winter stores were low, any large troop concentration would strain supply. Bram pointed at the map. How many men can Julian field? On paper? Edwin asked. Actual. Maybe half the official number. Why? Pay delays. Bram swore. Soren tapped the lower road. This bridge? Still damaged, I said. You know that? Merchant report. Then they have one reliable supply corridor. Edwin leaned back. Unless they use Ashvale. The room went quiet. Our road. Our grain stores. Our bridge network. Bram looked at me. If the Crown asks? They have not. If they do? I stared at the map. I will sell grain at standard market rate. Troop passage? Case by case. Command? No. Bram nodded once. He had expected that answer. Seraphine's letter arrived 3 days later. Adrian, the situation in the north is more serious than initial reports suggested. The Council has authorized emergency measures. Red March may require temporary access to Ashvale roads and supply markets. I ask that you facilitate cooperation in the interest of the realm. Seraphine, in the interest of the realm. I sat with that phrase for a long time. Then I drafted a response. Princess Seraphine, Ashvale will permit civilian refugees immediate passage. Crown forces may purchase food, fodder, medical supplies, and repair services at the same emergency rates available to local settlements. Military transit through the Central Road may be arranged with advance notice, provided Ashvale's defense needs are not compromised. I will not assume command of Red March forces. Adrian Vale. Her answer came quickly. I did not ask you to assume command. I looked at that sentence. Then at the second page. However, several members of Council believe your experience would be useful in coordinating the northern response. I folded the letter. Bram watched me. She asked? Without asking. That counts at court. It does not count here. Winter came hard. The Black Banner tribes did not retreat. They took North Phong. Then 2 outposts. Julian ordered a counterattack in deep snow. The army lost men, horses, and equipment without retaking either position. He blamed weather. Then poor intelligence. Then local officers. One of those officers was Captain Jaron Soule, a man I had promoted after Grey Ford. Jaron wrote to me privately. Warden, I resigned. I will not sign another report claiming the men failed when the plan was impossible. If there is work in Ashvale, I would be grateful for it. Jaron, I sent him an offer to train militia captains. He arrived with 12 others. By spring, Red March had lost the upper valley. Refugees began arriving daily. We opened temporary camps. Mara organized clinics. Edwin released reserve grain under the emergency charter. I rode through the camps and heard the same question again and again. Will you take Red March back? I always gave the same answer. No. Some looked disappointed. Some relieved. A few angry. One old farmer grabbed my sleeve. It was yours. It was never mine in the way you mean. You protected it. So should the man who has it now. He can't. That was the tragedy. Julian had wanted a title. Seraphine had wanted a manageable ally. Neither had understood that Red March was a machine made of thousands of small acts of competence. No single one looked heroic. A bridge inspection. A grain estimate. A clan meeting. A pay schedule. A road crew sent before snow. A captain trusted enough to report bad news. A magistrate punished for taking bribes even when his uncle sat in the royal assembly. A merchant paid on time. A soldier rotated home before resentment became desertion. That was how borders survived. Not because a duke stood on a wall looking impressive. By midsummer, King Aldrich died. Seraphine became queen. I sent a formal message of condolence and recognition. She sent no personal reply. Her coronation was lavish, according to travelers. One of her first acts was to confirm the offices she had already controlled during her father's illness. Julian stood beside her, still wearing the sash of High Marshal. Bram read that report and poured himself a drink before noon. I am beginning to think they are doing this specifically to upset me. They do not think about you at all. That is worse. The war widened. The Black Banner tribes were not a kingdom. They were a coalition. Under pressure from drought in the north, several groups had united behind a war chief named Daros Kane. He was not a fool. Once he realized Red March's defenses were politically divided and poorly supplied, he stopped raiding and began taking territory. He offered terms to villages. Food in exchange for surrender. Protection in exchange for tribute. That was how conquest became administration. I sent reports to Ashvale's council. We fortified our northern crossings. We trained more militia. We stockpiled grain. We negotiated with Stone River. Chief Varric came himself. He was older, broader, and angrier than I remembered. We met at a long wooden table in the river hall. He looked around. This place was mud. Mostly. You made roads. People like roads. Julian does not. I think he likes roads. He likes roads that lead to his house. I almost smiled. Varric's expression remained hard. He arrested my son. I heard. He called him a smuggler. Was he? No. Then that was stupid. Varric grunted. You always said that word too easily. What word? Stupid. I prefer accurate terms. He leaned forward. Do you want Red March? No. Why? Because it is not mine. It was. Not anymore. Your queen gave it away. She is not my queen. That made him pause. Ashvale recognizes Arden's crown. As a neighboring state. You truly left. Yes. Varric sat back. Then I will make agreement with Ashvale. We negotiated for 2 days. Not friendship. Not loyalty. Terms. Markets. Passage. Shared warnings. Compensation for damaged herds. Extradition for murder. Neutral ground for disputes. At the end, Varric pressed his thumb beside his clan's seal. You always understood that respect is cheaper than war. Most things are. The agreement changed the balance around Ashvale. Trade increased. Information improved. Daros Kane's scouts stopped testing our northern road because they could no longer move unseen. Red March had no such protection. The Royal Army lost Iron Gate Fortress in autumn. That was when Seraphine came herself. Not with a parade. Not with Julian. She arrived after dark with 6 guards and 1 exhausted secretary. I was in the council hall reviewing refugee numbers when the door opened. For a moment, I did not recognize her. She looked older. Not in years. In weight. The kind of weight rulers carry when people stop praising decisions and start measuring graves. Everyone in the hall stood. I did not. Ashvale did not require bowing to foreign monarchs. Seraphine noticed. Of course she did. Leave us, she said. No one moved. She looked at me. I looked at the council. You may go. They left slowly. Bram was last. He closed the door, but not before giving Seraphine a look that would have gotten a younger man arrested. She removed her gloves. Iron Gate fell. I know. Then you know what comes next. Depends on Daros. You always hated vague answers. I still do. She stepped toward the map table. He will move south. Probably. Probably? He may stop to consolidate. He has already sent riders toward the eastern road. Then he is testing your supply response. She stared at me. Just like that. What? You hear one fact and immediately know what it means. No. I hear one fact and know what it might mean. That difference is why I came. I said nothing. She placed both hands on the table. Take command. No. Her head snapped up. I am not asking you to return as Duke of Red March. Good. I am offering supreme field authority over the northern armies. No. Adrian. No. Do you understand what is happening? Better than most of your council. Then how can you refuse? Because your army is not a sword someone can hand me when the blade chips. Her eyes hardened. We can restore officers. Dead ones? We can recall veterans. Some. Rebuild supply. Over months. Then tell me what to do. There it was. The sentence I had once waited years to hear. Not because I wanted power. Because I had wanted her to value truth before disaster forced it on her. Now it came too late to feel satisfying. I pointed at the map. Withdraw from the upper eastern forts. Her expression changed. That gives up territory. Yes. We cannot. Then you will lose the men and the territory. Those forts guard the road. No. They used to guard the road when North Fong and Iron Gate were held. Now they are exposed. She stared at the map. Continue. Concentrate at Rivercross. Move grain first. Evacuate civilians from the low valley. Reopen talks with Stone River. Remove Julian from operational command. Her face tightened. That will fracture the court. The war has already fractured the border. He still has support. Then let his supporters command battalions. Do not be childish. I am being exact. She stepped away. You hate him. Yes. Then how do I know this is not personal? Because I left 2 years ago and never tried to take Ren March back. 3. I looked at her. What? 3 years. I had not realized. That hurt her more than I expected. You do not even count. No. Her eyes glistened, but she did not look away. I counted. I had no answer. She took a slow breath. If I remove Julian, will you come back? No. Why? Because the problem is not Julian. Then what is it? You. The word landed hard. Seraphine went still. You made a man High Marshal because he made you feel politically safe. He had support. You ignored military reports because they threatened a coalition. I inherited a divided court. You punished officers for bad news. I did not. Jaren's soul. Her jaw moved. He publicly contradicted command. He refused to falsify casualty responsibility. She looked away. You know all of this. I read. I need you. No. You need competence. Then give me yours. I did. For years. That is not fair. No. It is the exact consequence of your decision. Her voice rose. People will die. They already have. And you can prevent more. I am preventing more. Here. Ashvale. Yes. A valley you built because you were angry at me. I stood. No. For the first time that night, anger entered my voice. I built Ashvale because hundreds of people followed me into a place with no roads, no granary, and no protection. She flinched. I built it because families needed houses before winter. Because merchants needed contracts they could trust. Because farmers needed drainage. Because soldiers who resigned needed work that was not killing. Adrian. I did not build this to punish you. I stepped closer. That is what you still do not understand. She looked at me as if I had struck her. I thought you would come back. I know. I thought you needed time. I know. I thought Julian would prove himself, and then we could repair things. I know. How can you keep saying that? Because I understood what you thought. Then why did you not tell me I was wrong? I laughed once. Not kindly. How many times did you want me to tell you? She had no answer. The hall was silent. Finally, she whispered, I did not know. That is true. I did not know how much of Renmarch depended on you. That is also true. I did not know the northern agreements were so fragile. They were not fragile. She frowned. They broke. Because agreements are relationships with rules. You removed the people who maintained both. She sat down. For the first time in my life, I saw Queen Seraphine Arden look small. Not weak. Small. A person inside an office larger than she had understood. I read the old War Council records, she said. I said nothing. After Iron Gate. Her fingers tightened around one glove. I wanted to know why the old campaigns worked. I looked at her. I found your memoranda. Yes. Grey Ford. Yes. The Western Supply Corridor. Yes. The 3-day withdrawal at Karen. Yes. You planned all of it. Not alone. The histories say my father ordered them. He approved them. They say I negotiated the Stone River peace. You attended the final signing. Her face went pale. I was 19. Yes. I remember you staying awake for 4 nights before that meeting. I was younger. I thought you were helping me prepare. I was. You had already negotiated the terms. Most of them. She shut her eyes. Why did you let them credit me? Because you were the Crown's representative. Why did you never correct it? What would have been gained? You. I shook my head. That was never why I did it. Her eyes opened. Then why? Because I believed the kingdom mattered. The words hurt more than I expected. Because once, I had believed she did too. She stood slowly. If I do what you said, will you at least advise me? On written questions. That is all? That is all. Adrian. Seraphine. She looked at me for a long time. What happened to us? I could have answered with Julian. With Renmarch. With the writ. But those were events. Not causes. You stopped wanting a partner, I said. You wanted certainty. Her mouth trembled. And you stopped giving it to me. I never gave you certainty. You gave me confidence. That is not the same thing. It felt the same. I know. She laughed weakly. There you go again. I know. This time, she almost smiled. Then the smile disappeared. She left before dawn. 2 weeks later, Julian was removed from field command. Not stripped of Red March. Not imprisoned. Just removed. It should have happened years earlier. He responded exactly as I expected. He accused rivals. He blamed jealous officers. He claimed I had undermined him from Ashvale. Then he made the mistake that ended him. He ordered Red March's remaining cavalry to seize grain from neutral merchant caravans. One of those caravans belonged to 3 southern cities. Trade stopped. Credit collapsed. Suppliers demanded payment in advance. The army's food problem became a financial crisis. Seraphine arrested Julian for unlawful requisition. His supporters in court called it betrayal. Several withdrew from the government. The kingdom did not collapse in one dramatic night. It came apart the way badly maintained walls come apart. First one stone. Then another. A province refused emergency taxes. A southern lord kept his troops home. A creditor suspended loans. 2 garrisons mutinied over pay. Daros Kane advanced. Seraphine followed some of my advice. She withdrew from the exposed forts. She moved grain. She opened negotiations with Stone River. But there are points beyond which even good decisions can only reduce damage. Rivercross held for 6 weeks. Then the eastern bridge burned. The royal army retreated toward the capital. Refugees flooded every road. Ashvale took as many as we could. We expanded camps. We rationed. We built temporary shelters. I sent militia to escort civilians through the western passes. Bram commanded the escorts. Mara worked until she collapsed twice. Edwin somehow found grain where no grain should have existed. The council authorized emergency debt. We would be paying it for years. That was the cost of not turning people away. One evening, a messenger brought a sealed royal packet. Inside was a letter from Seraphine. No formal address. No title. Just my name. Adrian. The capital cannot hold indefinitely. I have ordered archives, hospitals, and civil offices to begin evacuation west. The nobles are calling it surrender. Perhaps it is. I no longer know where the line lies between preserving a kingdom and preserving the people who live inside it. I know now that you always did. I am not asking you to return. I am asking whether Ashvale can receive civilians. Not soldiers. Not court. Families. Children. The old. Anyone we can move. If the answer is no, I will understand. Seraphine. I read it twice. Then I took it to the council. We argued until midnight. Ashvale was already strained. More refugees meant more grain. More disease risk. More housing pressure. More debt. But we had room in the lower valley. Soren believed temporary bridges could open a second crossing. Edwin believed we could buy grain from the coast if we guaranteed future iron shipments. Mara said the clinics would break. Then she said we should do it anyway. The vote passed. We opened the western road. For 3 weeks, people came. Thousands. Some had once called Ashvale a mud settlement. Now they arrived with everything they owned tied to carts. We registered families. Assigned fields. Built kitchens. Separated fever cases. Buried the dead. The royal court came last. Not all of it. Some nobles fled south. Some made private agreements with Daros. Some stayed in the capital. Seraphine arrived with 3 wagons, a reduced guard, and no crown. She had left it behind. I met her at the river crossing. She dismounted. For a moment neither of us spoke. Behind her, carts rolled across the bridge. Children cried. Oxen pulled. Men carried wounded soldiers. The kingdom I had once helped build was coming apart plank by plank behind her. I lost the capital, she said. You evacuated it. I lost it. Both can be true. She looked past me toward Ashvale. There are walls now. Some. And towers. Too. You hated towers. I hate unnecessary towers. She laughed once. Then covered her mouth. The laugh became a sob. I looked away. Not because I wanted to punish her. Because grief deserves privacy when possible. She recovered. Where do I go? It was not a royal question. Just a tired woman asking where she was expected to sleep. We prepared rooms in the old guest house. Not your hall. No. Of course. She nodded. I started to turn. Adrian. I stopped. I found the original Red March accounts. I faced her. All of them. She swallowed. The roads. The grain contracts. The officer rotations. The payments to Stone River. The winter reserves. Yes. You built the Northern System before I ever joined the War Council. With others. You always say that. Because it is true. And every report goes through your office. Most. Every major campaign plan has your notes. Many. Every treaty has your revisions. That was my work. She stared at me. My father gave me medals. I remember. For your victories. Not mine alone. But not his. No. Not Julian's. No. Mine least of all. I did not answer. Her voice broke. I sent you away. Yes. I gave your land to him. Yes. I thought I was reducing your power. Yes. I was reducing mine. That was the first time she truly understood. Not that I had been secretly more important than everyone else. That would have been childish. No kingdom is built by one man. But systems have load-bearing parts. Remove enough of them at once, and collapse stops being surprising. I had been one. Bram had been one. Edwin. Soren. Jaren. The interpreters. The honest quartermasters. The officers willing to say no. The merchants who trusted payment. Seraphine had not driven out one indispensable man. She had dismantled an ecosystem because she mistook obedience for stability. You were not the only one, I said. Her eyes filled. I know. That mattered. More than an apology centered on me. I know that now. She looked toward the refugee road. I thought ruling meant making sure no one person could become too necessary. That is not entirely wrong. Then where did I fail? You replaced necessary people with loyal people and assumed loyalty could perform their jobs. She closed her eyes. That sounds so obvious. Most disasters do afterward. She smiled bitterly. What happens now? Ashvale absorbs who it can. And the kingdom? I looked east. Smoke darkened the distant horizon. The old kingdom may be finished. She flinched. You can say that calmly. I have had longer to accept that institutions are not immortal. What about me? That question surprised me. What about you? I am still queen. To whom? Her face tightened. I had not meant it cruelly. But truth can wound without cruelty. She looked back at the road. Some provinces still recognize me. Then govern what still recognizes you. From Ashvale? No. She turned. No? You may stay temporarily as a government in exile under guest terms. Her expression changed. You would put conditions on me. Yes. I am Queen of Arden. In Arden. This was once Arden. Once. Her chin lifted. There was the old Seraphine. I could restore the old claim. With what army? She almost smiled. Still impossible. Still exact. She looked down. What are the conditions? No recruitment without council approval. No taxation. No seizure. No arrest of Ashvale residents by royal authority. Your guards obey local peace rules. Your court pays for provisions when able. And if I refuse? You continue west. She studied me. Years ago, she would have called it insolence. Now she simply nodded. I accept. That was how the Queen of Arden became a guest in the Free March. Julian arrived 3 days later under guard. I had not expected that. Seraphine had ordered him transferred west before the capital evacuation. When I saw him in the holding yard, he looked thinner. Less polished. Still handsome. Still angry. Brother. I said nothing. He laughed. Nothing? What do you want me to say? You won. No. Look around. I did. At the stone yard. The militia post. The refugees. The exhausted clerks. Does this look like winning? You have land. Men. Trade. She came to you. Thousands of people lost homes. Because she chose wrong. Yes. She chose me. Yes. And you were waiting for me to fail. No. He stepped closer to the bars. Liar. I was busy. Building this. Yes. To prove you didn't need Ren March. No. His face twisted. Everything you do is a message. That is how you live, Julian. Not me. You think you're better. I think I was better at governing Ren March. Of course you do. I have evidence. He laughed sharply. Still the same. Yes. Do you know what it was like? What? Growing up beside you. I leaned against the wall. No. Tell me. That surprised him. He looked away. Every tutor compared us. I didn't. Every officer knew who would inherit. That was the law. Every servant called you my lord before father was even dead. I hated that. You loved it. No. You had everything. My mother died when I was 12. So did mine. I paused. I had known the year she died. I had never once asked what that year had done to him. Julian's mouth tightened. Exactly. Silence settled between us. He continued. You got grief and inheritance. I got grief and a stipend. You got an estate. Not a name. You had our father's name. Not his place. No. Never enough. There was honesty in that. Not excuse. Honesty. You wanted Ren March because you thought it would prove you were equal. I wanted one thing that wasn't yours first. I nodded. And when you got it? His eyes hardened. Everyone expected me to be you. No. Yes. That was the first mistake. What? Trying to be me. He stared. You think that helps? No. Then why say it? Because Ren March did not need another me. It needed someone who respected what already worked long enough to understand it. His jaw clenched. I was not going to live in your shadow. So you turned off the lamps? He flinched. I regretted the cruelty as soon as I said it. But not enough to take it back. Julian sat on the bench. What happens to me? Asked Seraphine. She wants a trial. Then you will have one. You could stop it. No. You could tell her the requisitions were wartime necessity. Were they? He looked away. No. Then I will not lie. His hands closed. She used me. You used each other. She wanted my supporters. You wanted my duchy. And you wanted her. Once. The words stayed in my head. He saw the answer in my face. Not anymore. No. He laughed softly. Then I really did take nothing from you. I looked at him. He finally understood. Red March had mattered. Seraphine had mattered. The title had mattered. But by the time he grasped them, I had already learned to live without all three. He had stolen a version of my life that no longer existed. His trial took months. Not because justice was weak. Because justice was slow when done properly. Records were gathered. Witnesses called. Orders compared. Seraphine testified. So did merchants. Officers. Clerks. Julian was convicted of unlawful seizure, falsification of supply reports, and misuse of military authority. He was not sentenced to death. I argued against it when the council asked my view. Not for mercy. For proportion. He lost title, property obtained through the Red March grant, and military standing. He was sentenced to labor under supervision in the Western Reconstruction Corps. Bram thought that was funny. Give him a shovel. That is the idea. He might finally learn roads. Perhaps. Red March itself fractured. Some northern towns joined Stone River's compact. Some swore temporary allegiance to Deras. Some declared local councils. Some asked Ashevale for protection. We did not annex all of them. That surprised people. Power attracts invitations during chaos. But taking territory creates obligations. We accepted 3 border districts after local votes and negotiated terms with 2 others. The rest remained independent or contested. Deras Kane eventually approached us for talks. He had won more land than he could govern. That is another truth conquerors learn late. We met at a neutral fort. He was shorter than I expected. Broad shoulders. Gray eyes. No dramatic scars. Just a tired man who had spent years persuading warriors to become administrators. You were the old Duke, he said. Yes. They say you built Arden's North. People say many things. They say if the Queen had kept you, I would never have crossed Iron Gate. Maybe. He laughed. At least you are not vain. I am vain about roads. So I have heard. We negotiated borders. Trade. Prisoner exchange. Water rights. No songs were written about it. That was why it mattered. Peace is mostly paperwork people are willing to obey. 5 years after Seraphine gave Red March to Julian, the old kingdom of Arden ceased to exist as a single state. Not with a coronation. Not with an official declaration. It simply stopped being one thing. The southern provinces formed a league. The eastern cities declared commercial independence. Deras held much of the north. Ashevale and its associated districts became the Free Marches. Seraphine retained 3 western counties and the loyalty of several old houses. She stopped calling herself Queen of Arden. At first in foreign documents. Then in local ones. Eventually, she used the title Lady Regent of the Western Compact. The day she changed it officially, she came to see me. We were both older. There was silver at her temples. My left knee hurt in cold weather. Time had been less dramatic than war and more powerful. She found me in the orchard outside the council hall. I signed it. I heard. No crown. No. No kingdom. No. She sat on the low stone wall. I used to think giving up a title meant losing. Sometimes it does. And sometimes? It means admitting the truth before the truth becomes more expensive. She smiled. You would have made an irritating philosopher. I make an irritating administrator. That too. We sat in silence. Children were running between the trees. Not ours. We had never married. That future belonged to another life. Seraphine watched them. Do you ever regret leaving? Yes. She looked at me quickly. I nodded toward the east. I regret people were hurt. That isn't what I asked. I know. Do you regret leaving me? I thought about it. Not because I did not know. Because she deserved a real answer. I regret that we became people who needed me to leave. Her eyes lowered. But no. No. She nodded. I thought so. What about you? Every day for a long time. I said nothing. Then less often. She smiled faintly. That probably disappoints you. No. I think part of me wanted to punish myself forever. It felt like proof that I understood. Pain is not proof. You would say that. It is still true. She picked up a fallen apple and turned it in her hands. I understand something now. What? I did not lose you because I chose Julian once. I waited. I lost you because for years before that, every time you warned me, I treated your disagreement as disloyalty. I looked at her. She continued. The duchy was only the moment you finally believed me. That was exact. Yes. She laughed softly. You taught me that word. I am sorry. No, you're not. No. We smiled. There was sadness in it. But not the old wound. Some wounds heal into information. They remain part of you without continuing to bleed. Seraphine stood. The Western Council wants a trade agreement. Send terms. They asked whether I should negotiate personally. Should you? I thought I would. Then do. She took 2 steps, then stopped. Adrian. Yes? When the historians write about the Old Kingdom, they will say it fell because of invasion. They will be partly right. They will say Daros was stronger. He was, eventually. They will say the nobles were divided. Also true. She looked at me. But I know when it really began. I did not answer. She did not need me to. The beginning was not the day Iron Gate fell. Not the day the capital emptied. Not even the day Julian ordered cavalry into the snow. It began in a bright hall beneath golden banners. A princess had decided that competence was dangerous because it could not be controlled. A bastard son had mistaken possession for ability. A court had applauded because the decision made politics easier. And a man who had spent most of his life holding a complicated system together had finally stopped arguing for the right to keep doing it. I watched Seraphine walk back toward the road. Then I turned toward the council hall. There were bridge repairs to approve. A school charter waiting for review. A grain dispute between 2 districts. A trade delegation arriving by evening. Ordinary problems. Real ones. The kind that build a country when solved well and destroy one when ignored. People still told stories about the kingdom I had supposedly won for Seraphine. They exaggerated. They always did. No one man wins a kingdom. I had needed soldiers, farmers, engineers, clerks, merchants, healers, scouts, diplomats, men willing to fight, women willing to keep towns alive while they did. The tragedy was never that Seraphine had driven away one irreplaceable hero. The tragedy was that she had looked at a living structure made of thousands of capable people and decided loyalty mattered more than competence. When I left, many of those people left too. Not because I ordered them. Because they had already learned what the court had not. A kingdom is not land. It is not a crown. It is not a bloodline. It is a network of promises people still believe will be kept. Once enough of those promises break, the borders on a map become memory. Ashvale survived because we understood that early. The old kingdom did not. And by the time Seraphine finally understood what she had sent away, there was nothing left for me to return to.